I found a hidden camera in my bedroom. When I checked the footage, I was horrified. I always felt like there was something off about my room, almost as if someone was watching me but would always brush it off, blaming it on the fact that my family had just moved into a new house. However, I was wrong, and I would soon discover the horrifying secret this house has been hiding. It all started when we heard a loud bang upstairs, followed by my dog Sasha growling and barking. She sounded absolutely ready to kill. It made everyone promptly freak out and rush upstairs, only to find Sasha was directing her attack at something in my doorway. We turned the corner expecting to find a snake or maybe even an intruder, but instead we find nothing. Absolutely nothing. Thin air. We didn't know what to attribute the loud bang to, but my family preferred to just ignore that and call Sasha old and delusional. We had to rip her away from the doorway and shove her outside, and even then she clawed urgently at the door as if she felt the need to defend us from something. It scared me, but I avoided speaking up about it under the fear that my family would laugh at me and call me paranoid. This was the biggest mistake of my entire life. Flash forward to now. I'd just gotten home from school. The house was relatively empty as both parents were working and my siblings had sports practice. Sasha was sprawled out in the dirt under a tree, eyeing up the goats and wagging her tail when a baby goat sniffed her warily. I knocked on the screen door to grab her attention, not quite wanting to be alone in the house when I had a dog. Obediently, she sprinted towards the door and leaped through before making herself cozy on the cool tile in the kitchen. I'd already grabbed a Sprite from the refrigerator and was ready to throw myself down on the couch and turn on the TV when suddenly there was another loud bang. Sasha immediately jumped up and began growling, pointing her body like an arrow at the staircase as if it were prey. Naturally, I bounded over to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife I could find. Sasha beat me to investigating the situation as she promptly ran straight up the stairs and left me in the dust. Fearing the worst, I ran up after her. To my utter shock, she bounded right into my room and dove straight into the back end of my closet and began sniffing and snorting insistently on the wall behind my rack of clothes. I sighed. Okay, maybe a mouse in the wall or something is that I presumed. I walked up to where Sasha was snorting around and hesitantly pulled back the rack of clothes to reveal a square hole cut into the wallpaper. It was door-shaped and could fit an average person, but was short enough that said person would have to crawl to enter. I at first did not realize it was a door. It doesn't really look like one, rather just a perfectly aligned tear in the wallpaper. But upon running my fingers along it and force shoving one in, I found it flopped forward and fell to the floor with a heavy clap. A cut out of my wall. There was a light source from somewhere inside this crawl space, along with a ton of boxes which made no sense, and it seemed to be the only thing in there from my view. I would have never gone in there myself, but Sasha zipped right through when she realized I wasn't running away from it and began sniffing around in there. I tried calling her out, but she just looked at me over her shoulder like a disapproving mother-in-law and continued her quest for interesting scents. Feeling like she was never going to get out, I was faced with the reality that I'd have to crawl in and get her out myself, so I did. The room was so small that even at my short height I felt the ceiling brush my head every time I took a step. A few steps in, as I observed the stacks of cardboard boxes, I came across something. A blue sleeping bag. At first I froze, absolutely positive some psycho was right behind me and was going to clamp the hole shut and lock me in for all of eternity because I discovered their secret. But then I rationalized that maybe it was just more junk that happened to be spread out neatly on the floor coincidentally. So I worked up the courage to approach the sleeping bag. As more of it came into view, I noticed a small camera positioned neatly on top. Next to it was a jar of salted peanuts. I would have frozen up again, and I did, but much more briefly this time as I'd already given myself enough scares for it to get old. I crouched down and picked up the video camera. It was an old-style one, the one that had a little flip-out viewing screen. It turned on and had a nearly full battery percentage. Just then I heard the front door slam, and immediately bolted out of the room, camera in hand. It turned out it was just my mom, so I immediately ran down to explain what happened desperately. She at first was skeptic, rolling her eyes and throwing around the word really a few times, before finally becoming convinced and following me up the stairs. When I presented to her the camera, my mom quickly said we had to view what was on it, and hooked it up to our TV. The first tape was of some type of cameraman in a parking lot. He walks confidently into a supermarket and begins walking around, until suddenly he aims his camera up and zooms in on a cluster of people. It's unclear what he's focusing on until an elderly couple come into view. I recognize them immediately. They're the couple that lived on the property before we moved in. The cameraman keeps his camera aimed on them for the rest of the video. He moves with them, keeping a safe distance, but he never loses sight of them. He follows them through the whole store and peeks over aisles to get shots of them. Abruptly, the camera turns around to a store employee who taps the cameraman's shoulder angrily and inquires on what exactly he is filming. The next is the first absolutely alarming tape.